To record?
I did. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jack Barber, and with me is Don Roberts. I want to say hello.
Hey, guys.
And hopefully by tuning in, you know we're Exotech already, but we're a management consulting firm that focuses exclusively on system integration business in the control, test, measurement, and automation space. Appreciate you tuning in today, and we're going to talk a little bit about talent, strategy, and risk. It was really inspired by a book by that name, which points to a big shift in public ownership that has created a new set of challenges for boards, company boards, from permanent institutional investors who are focused on creating and preserving long-term corporate value. These investors are stating in no uncertain terms that simply managing for short-term shareholder profit is not acceptable. Now, given this book was written for public companies, you might pick it up and read it and wonder how it applies to the SI community, which are mostly private companies. So our presentation isn't intended to really be a book report. We just want to use this as a framework. We'll reference the book from time to time, but really want to focus on how these three perspectives apply to system integrators and how you effectively can link your talent, your strategy, while minimizing risk. Don?
Yeah, Jack, I really like the concept of this book, right? So, like, as you said, it's really designed for large publicly traded, but I think that the concept of talent strategy and risk really applies. And I want to share a little bit of a story. One of our clients has done a really great job of focusing in on these three different areas. So they've, for instance, they've implemented a strategic HR position to focus on the long-term talent issue. Their strategy, they used to do just kind of a single strategy session. Now they've broken that out and said, okay, what's our 5-year strategy? What's our 1-year strategy? And then what's our quarterly perspective on how we're going to accomplish that? And then they also kind of tweak their strategy around a defensive position and an offensive position, and then understand the risks associated with each. If you just are too defensive, then you could inhibit your ability to grow in a period when growth is pretty easy to accomplish right now. So I think that that approach that they've taken around the talent strategy and risk is great, but they've actually started to roll that into the culture. And I mean, this is not a company that, well, I'd say like the world on fire or anything like that, but their growth in both profits and revenue has been pretty spectacular. It's nice and steady. They do their incremental changes, fix the small problems, and move on. So I think that's a great story of why I certainly like the talent strategy and risk. When I look at the results, particularly from this, it works.
All right. Yeah, thanks. It's nice to kind of tie it back to real world examples. So, all right. So in the talent section of this book, is kind of shown by this graphic here, they state that of all the factors that go into long-term value, talent is the most important one for a company board to be talking about. So it just emphasizes the importance of people. Now, they talk about it in terms of human capital as an asset and how to maximize that asset, as well as building a strong C-suite. We often refer to this as strategic HR, just to emphasize the importance of talent as part of your strategy as well. And we see this really playing out in the RSI community in three primary ways, with respect to employee management and how that's being done these days, with respect to leadership development and what you should be focusing on, and then last but not least, building a strong culture. So Don, let's talk about these in more detail. First of all, just starting with employee management. You just have to start there because it's kind of the most common challenge in our SI community right now is just combating, some call it the Great Resignation, some people call it the Great Migration. Competition for labor is fierce. We're hearing that across our peer groups, across our clients. Not only just recruiting new folks, but retaining employees as well. In the next normal, the pandemic, the reality is that workers have tasted the autonomy of remote work, which has emboldened them to think more about themselves and their own destinies and question where they're working and how they're working. And they're now, more able to vote with their feet. If they don't like their situation, they're more likely to willing to leave that comfort zone that they had in the past to look for greener pastures. So, what are the implications for SIs? First is, SIs are having to take a hard look at remote and hybrid work. As Don says, I think that you maybe got this from an article, Don, that if remote were a city, then it would be the largest job market now. Many of our clients are looking at on a job-by-job basis within their organization which ones can successfully be done remotely, and considering hiring talent and using their talent accordingly, as well as in my peer groups, I've heard a lot about considering flexible and mandatory office hours. If people are going to be able to adapt their work time as long as they're getting their jobs, what are the expectations for when people do need to be plugged in, either physically in the office or available in remote hours?
Yeah, and on that remote city, so that was high-tech jobs. And when they looked at the high-tech jobs, you'd think of Silicon Valley, maybe Boston area. But if remote was a city, it would, I think it was almost double those other markets. So yeah, that's right squarely in our area.
When talking about remote, another thing that has cropped up a lot is having to get creative with onboarding. What does onboarding look like when you have a remote worker? How do you get that remote worker up and going and productive as quickly as possible, as well as how do you get them, I'll say, integrated into the organization when they're not physically there? So those are just a couple of challenges we're seeing, and things that our clients are going to work on with respect to their talent. The next area, given the pressures imposed by a labor force that is more apt to stray, is our clients reviewing their compensation and benefits. Increased pay is a likely reality. Anytime there's a shortage of supply, that's going to drive up prices. But really going into where you want to invest and how much you want to invest in your talent pool. And then, just as importantly, passing that along to the clients. They're seeing the same pressures. So it's opportunistic in a good and rightful way to consider price increases with respect to your clients.
Yeah, and Jack, you bring up the point that they're seeing this already, whether it's from the integrator or from some other supplier to them, they're already seeing the labor shortage driving up prices for their own employees, and other kinds of subcontractors. So I think it's something that needs to be part of the plan for the integrators for the next year, two.
Yeah. And then the final area on employee management that's really a hot topic with our clients is retention. As we said, it's more likely for people to stray. So what can we do to successfully combat that? So, would say that focusing on career development is increasingly important, particularly with younger workers. There's this idea of stay interviews, which is actually just like you ask questions that you do of a potential hire. Why, what are you looking for in your job? What, where do you see yourself 3 to 5 years from now? Those sorts of things is actually asking that. You're almost interviewing your own employees and having that conversation with them. What are their career aspirations, and how can you and their manager work, develop a plan for them so that they don't need to look further afield. They can see those opportunities within your own organization. And then the other thing I'll say is about rehire strategies, which is don't take your eye off the ball. First of all, don't burn your bridge. So if somebody leaves, try to have it, it's painful, but have them leave under the best terms as possible, and then have a strategy to stay in contact with that person. To be a tickler 6 months or a year out on your calendar to reach back to that person. Perhaps they found that the grass isn't greener. They may not, want to come back and let you know that. But if you reach out to them, we have heard clients successful at getting people to come back on board. Even folks that have retired, particularly when you're considering remote work options, you can reach out to somebody who's retired. They may not be wanting to come back in the office and spend full time, but if they can give you, 10, 20, productive hours, they may be tired of trying to play golf or whatever it is they wanted to do in their retirement. They may actually be excited about the opportunity to work. So that's some ways to kind of shore up your talent.
Yeah, the boomerang is being very, very successful for most of the integrators. It's people get comfortable in the culture they're in. So I like to see that.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's go on to the next area with respect to leadership development and empowerment. The migration of our labor force is making it harder to not only harder to gather engineering talent, but it's even reaching more senior leadership positions. We certainly hear from our clients that key leaders at this level are getting rated by old and even new competitors. With kind of the promise that you want to be a manager or director, you want more responsibility. Hey, we'll jump ship and we'll get you that promotion and that raise. In our opinion, leadership development in our SI community is significantly behind target. For many of the SIs, there's simply no bench. The leaders think that they are too busy for their own professional development. So the other leaders in their organization presume the same. Not to mention, the critical development of additional leaders, the ones that are going to, be there to support your growth as time goes on. So it's almost as if it's in a blind spot. People just don't seem to recognize that this is an important part to your company's overall strategy, and that leadership development should be a priority.
Yeah, and when you think about it, so these guys are highly stressed right now, so it makes them an even easier target for somebody to take away.
Yeah. So our recommendation, what we really need to be doing is proactively seeking and developing the necessary leadership traits and skills for our team. If you've heard us on this topic before, we believe that a foundational element of that is more self-awareness and empathy for others is a key leadership trait. There are, skills in team management that you can train on, how to build trust, resolve conflicts, problem solving, just providing that sort of professional development for yourself and for your leaders and potential leaders. Don, any thoughts there?
Lots of thoughts, but I want to be cautious too. We're quickly coming up on our third of the way through here, so.
Okay. All right. So, anyways, yeah, there's definitely training that can and should be done for your leaders in your organization to make sure that you're well positioned there. And then, yeah, we'll finish out this first section with building culture. We kind of wanted to emphasize that because, in our opinion, it's kind of more important than ever. Culture is, can not only attract but also keep talent in your organization. There's various ways to do that. Don, you want to share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there's a number of things that people are starting to focus in on. There are a lot of people doing more interviewing of the employees to understand the culture from the employee's perspective, not just from the company's perspective. They're making sure that there's not too much of a disconnect there. We'll talk in the strategy session too about a culture of winning and a culture of having a vision of where they're going and the importance of that. And we hit a little bit on the values, the importance of the cultural match around values as well. So I think a lot of important things. This is like the not rocket science part of it, right? It's just a matter of relationships and behaviors and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. Again, a little bit more difficult with the remote and the hybrid, but it's still pretty critical.
Yeah. And, I'd say, some folks, define their culture and their values, and then it, just sits in the corner of their website and isn't really considered again, where, we think of it like a muscle, like it's really something that needs to be practiced and exercised. You should teach your culture within your organization, hire by your culture, review people based on your culture, reward. I see excellent programs of, taking a key value each quarter and asking employees to recognize when others are exhibiting that value. So, methods like that to really draw it up and say that you're serious about their culture and it's not just, some words on a web page somewhere. And then ultimately fire about your culture. If somebody is not behaving consistently with your culture, it certainly can undermine your culture, and that should be a factor in your decision making. So if you're reviewing based on culture, then that kind of goes hand in hand, and it shouldn't come as a surprise if you can't get those things in. All right. I think somebody was unmuted, so if you can just
we got it.
Make sure they're muted, that'd be great. And then Don, your thoughts on diversity and inclusion. I know you've seen this with your clients.
Yeah, so this has been certainly last fall. It was a pretty important topic, and I think it is going to continue. Obviously, diversity is a little bit more difficult in the highly technical industries because we're just not seeing the females going into that space and stuff like that. But it is critical. And it's a diversity of thought as much as anything as well, right? It's not just the ethnic diversity, it's diversity of thinking. So common values, diversity of thought.
Gotcha. All right. So we'll wrap up this section and move on. That's kind of some of our insights into the talent space of the organization. If you're looking for some additional information beyond what we've provided, here are a couple of, and we like to recommend books that we think hit on topics well. Talent Wins is a really good book. It's actually a predecessor to the Talent Strategy Risk book. So that can provoke your thoughts in this area as well. If you're looking to build a good culture, work rules can inspire some good ideas. And then if you're looking for team development ideas, the 5 dysfunctions of team offer some really practical suggestions that you and your leaders can apply to the teams that they're managing. And then, with respect to leadership development, here's some investments to consider. You invest in other parts of the organization. How are you investing in your people? So one question to ask would be, who is providing the coaching and mentoring for your leaders? Do you have a way that handle that within your organization, or do you need to look at external methods to do that? For instance, a peer group is a nice, I'll say, surrogate for that, and allows your folks to network and learn and grow from others and their experience. So if you don't have good answers to that, we can follow up offline. Exotech can help point you in the right direction. All right, let's move to the next part of the book. Again, this is not a book report, but just to use it for inspiration for where we're going to go with this topic. So, second area that boards are being asked to pay particular attention to is strategy. The book emphasizes that if talent is the first pillar of creating long-term value and strength, then strategy is second. And they talk about how they're kind of twinned and reciprocal. That is, that talent sets strategy, and strategy relies on talent for implementation. And we certainly see this is reflected in our SI community. There's no shortage of companies with talented engineers, but many lack solid strategic plans and execution to fuel their growth. So they end up just kind of treading water. And then almost the other way around, Don, I know you're famous for saying there's no shortage of visionaries with great ideas. So you can, but without a strategic plan and execution, those ideas, just never take flight. So, what we're going to do in this section is we recommend in this area of strategy, breaking it into 3 parts. There's creating a strategic vision, there's planning to achieve that vision, and then there's implementing the necessary processes to execute according to that vision. Yeah.
Yeah, like you said, no shortage of brilliant people in our space. The issue is keeping focused on your strategy, not in your business. So getting the execution done.
All right. So in the area of vision, we suggest with our clients always we start with the core values. People often want to skip over those and jump straight into getting to their strategic vision and their strategic plan. But we strongly believe that it's a must do, perhaps even more important coupled with the culture conversation that we just had, that defining those values as they drive the culture in your organization. It guides the behavior of the organization and will determine whether or not you're operating or not. And once you have those core values defined, you can hold your leaders accountable to them. As we said, managers can then hire, review, and even fire according to those values, and put in that recognition and reward for when they see those values being delivered. Second aspect to a vision is usually your focus. I know this is a challenging area for system integrators who usually have brilliant engineer minds, and they don't, any new project is a new challenge. So there's a tendency to want to say yes to everything, but in a saturated market, which occurs in the system integration business, it's really about how are we distinguishing ourselves from our competition, and more importantly, how are we standing out in our customers' mind? What do they recognize us differently from the rest? how are we unique to our clients, and putting it in a term that will resonate with the clients. I often say, what word do you want to own in your customer? It's a good way to think about it, and it's not really to I know it occurs like you're constraining your business by focusing, but really it's more of a North Star. It's a general direction for your company, and will drive alignment within your organization, within the opportunities you pursue with your client, and then it'll build upon itself. Non-thoughts there?
Well, I was ready to jump on the next one, the communications, and how important the communications is too, right? So, I mean, being able to communicate what the strategy is, to your point around focus, well, so that means if this great opportunity shows up, I don't go there, because no, if that opportunity is not going to distract me and not going to take away from the business, then yeah, we'll still go after that. Communications of the strategy is probably the toughest thing, and as the companies grow, it gets harder, not easier. I think also when you take a look at the current environment with the hybrid and the remote, and being able to communicate the strategy, it's just that much more difficult. But I have seen that vision, and that the communication of that vision and the clarity of that vision leads actually to employee retention. Right, so that the people that don't feel that there is that vision there, or it's just unclear, are more likely to jump ship, because they don't see themselves as part of that picture. So whether you're communicating your strategy, your employees, your clients, your partners, just being really rock solid about it, and you can never over communicate.
Yeah, I appreciate that point, particularly with respect to the employees. The should be part of your responsibility, your manager's responsibility, to communicate what they do is tied into that strategy and that vision. It will certainly help with retention if they feel like they're part of something that's happening, as opposed to just clocking in and out. So. It's interesting, Don, as we're talking about this, how they really do, these areas kind of intertwine with each other. And so having a good strategy can help you build good talent, and vice versa. So I just wanted to hit on that partner one as well. Whether that's, partnered with a particular vendor or whatnot, is take the time to communicate what that strategy, what that focus is to your partners as well, and communicate it in a way. Don't let them have to figure it out for themselves. How does that fit into their picture as well? So taking that vision and that strategy and have it make sense and make it important to what that partner is out to achieve is important.
Yeah, and particularly in today's environment. So we have a very strong CapEx environment. It's been strong now for the last year or so, almost 2 years. It looks like it's going to be strong for the next couple of years. So in a strong CapEx environment, OEMs do really well. So people that manufacture machinery or whatever, they could make excellent partners. When the economy's weaker, so the OEMs are not as strong a challenge or a channel, because of they're struggling to get orders too. But with strong CapEx, think of the OEMs as partners, machine builders or whatever.
All right, let's move on then. So and I should say, let me back up just a second. So I put there at the bottom, we did do a webinar on strategic vision. So if you want to go to our site and get more details about that, you can. Similarly with strategic planning, this is an area that we have material on our website. We have a webinar that we did on getting the most out of your strategic plan anyway. So, there are lots of tools available to do strategic planning. We kind of put some up here as examples. On the right, there are 3 tools that are excellent in kind of helping to formulate your strategy. In the middle, there's the strategy map and balanced scorecards can be used in combination to assess kind of from 4 different perspectives, which we find is particularly useful in making sure you're holistic in your planning process. So from a financial perspective, customer perspective, your internal operations, and then your people, their learning and their growth is make sure that when you're going through your strategic planning process that you consider those different perspectives so you're not just formulating without a complete picture. And then on the right, and we'll talk more about this, we certainly recommend the traction methodology for then once you have your plan in place. It's a prescriptive tool, prescriptive way of then making sure you're actually executing according to that strategic plan.
Yeah, and one of the things that I see as a strength is a combination of some of these. So you may be using traction as your strategic planning approach. I would still take time to combine that occasionally with a SWOT analysis, so that you're getting the benefit of that. If I'm looking at traction, I would probably want to look at it and reflect against the 4 perspectives of a balanced scorecard. Am I considering the client's from perspective, or am I considering an internal process perspective? And then final comment around this is business model canvas. We're starting to see more and more companies talk about putting out products and being more product centric in their delivery. And I wouldn't consider doing a product without doing a business model canvas, right? So that's the best tool that you can have for trying to figure out what's my go-to-market strategy around that particular product. So it's about a combination of a bunch of these. And that business model canvas, for instance, we're considering firing up a peer group around just product managers, and that would be one of the primary tools that we would be looking at with that peer group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, appreciate that perspective, Don. Let's wrap this section up on strategy with, as I just kind of mentioned. So it's if you just create a plan and then the plan sits on the shelf and collects dust, then kind of wasted time, wasted opportunity. Strategic planning is not a single event, but it's rather an integral part of an ongoing execution strategy. Again, I'll refer to the business brief that we have referenced at the bottom of that slide. In it, we recommend ways to kind of get your plans and put them in action and actively monitor them, even modify or tweak them as you're moving your organization forward. So, it's very tempting, very common in some of our clients, some of our the system integration community to get so focused on the customers and the projects that they're consumed with working in their business, and they don't carve out the time and really attention to focus on their business. That usually seems like, okay, we're going to step away for our annual strategic plan and take a look at our overall business. But then it's just amazing how quickly you can get consumed in the day-to-day, and then time goes by and you haven't really executed to do what you need to do on your business to make sure it has stability and growth.
Yeah, and right now, I mean, growth is great, right? There's a lot of opportunity for growth. Although I do see some people not sticking to their strategy and kind of doing the home runs and taking all these big fancy projects and stuff like that. Stability is going to be critical to get through the next several years of good solid growth. So I would rather be hitting for singles and doubles than home runs any day, because I can build a good stable company around that.
All right, so need to kind of wrap up this section and move on to the last. So here's some, if you want additional material, looking for more information in this area, already kind of had some in our slides, would recommend The Advantage and Focus as good books. and we've mentioned Traction, but also wanted to recommend Scaling Up. It's a good book, and it's got really practical tips and even tools to guide your strategic process. So pretty prescriptive and a good source if you're looking to kind of do it yourself. As I've mentioned, you can go to the Exotech resources for webinars and briefs and whatnot on each of these three areas. And then finally, I'll risk putting in a plug for with respect to external perspective. If you're looking for input into your strategic planning process, one thing that we've started doing with our clients is you can ask us to essentially participate in your strategic planning session and just provide kind of our state of the industry sort of thing. Some of the information that we're providing to you guys today, but in a form where that can inject, thought and provoke thoughts in your strategic planning process. And we could do that remotely, and we're doing that for our clients now. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. If you don't have a strategic planning process and kind of need to get one in place, we can certainly come out and facilitate a strategic planning session for you. And then to the extent that you want, stay involved from the execution perspective. If you do have a strategic planning process in place and just are looking for that external perspective, that person to challenge your assumptions and whatnot, we're also available to be an advisor to your planning process.
Marcus, I see you get your hand up there. Do you have something you want to add there?
Yeah, I just want to add that, the strategic planning also with the Traction, get a grip on your business is very good. With the VTO you showed, and I have to say for the other folks also, the collaboration here with Don and Jack is very good. We implemented that Traction some years ago, and we did last week and also again planning session, strategic meeting, off-campus meeting with our managing director colleagues, and so it is very successful. That you stick to a plan with the VTO with some rocks and get a grip on the street to your next peoples and execute the plan. So I think these are very good tools, and Jack and also Don moderate that also very well in this kind of vision traction organizer. So I can recommend definitely that book and also the collaboration with these two guys. Yeah.
Thanks, Marcus.
All right. Promise that wasn't a
that was
scripted endorsement from Marcus.
Just the feedback.
But I appreciate you chiming in, Marcus. It's a great example because Exotech has participated with NOS in their strategic planning process over years past, and then obviously with COVID and NOS being located in Germany, that became logistically difficult to do. So, but we did enjoy coming in and doing the kind of state of the industry presentation to be able to at least provide, hey, here's our perspective on things that are going in the market that you should consider in your strategic planning process. Great. All right, let's move on to risks and be appropriate to the time. So the last section of this book, as you might expect from the way it's entitled, is risk, and they emphasize the importance of corporate risk management. The book says that early warning systems of American corporations have failed them in recent years, not only because companies did not foresee disastrous events, but they weren't prepared to act when they came upon them. So that's the last perspective we want to apply to our SI community. Kind of what are the current threats and how are we accounting for them?
Yeah, on that slide, Jack, I like if you go back to that slide, the second from the bottom. Protect the critical 2% of your staff, right? I think that is one that is becoming louder and louder as that gets rated across the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, kind of the intertwining of talent strategy and risk. That risk factor for your talent has in the current environment become a higher risk than was pre-COVID. Yeah, so when we kind of divided this into, okay, what are some external risks that are affecting the SI community, and then we'll take a look at some of the kind of common internal risks. So hard to look externally and not start with COVID. You know, it's been the most discussed topic across our peer groups, regardless of which area they're focusing on, whether it's project development, business development, at the executive level, et cetera. COVID has been a fixture of a discussion topic in pretty much all of our peer groups, you know, because it's fundamentally changed the way we manage our products, deploy and maintain the solutions, you know, how we go about winning new businesses. And the implications just continue to be vast. Found some of your thoughts on how our clients are handling the ongoing evolution of COVID?
Yeah, well, certainly it's another one of those things that says, yeah, communicate, right? So I think probably the biggest thing, particularly in North America or in the US with the vaccination requirements, where any company over 100 employees, so basically all of the integrators' clients are going to have a vaccination requirement. And many of them we know are going to push that through to subcontractors. A lot does, as I understand it, doesn't require that to be the case, but I think that we will definitely see that. And certainly, you know, the influence of OSHA with if you were to bring a COVID into their plant, that would be an OSHA event. That's something that they wouldn't want to deal with. The big challenge for integrators, though, is being able to, you know, with the privacy and HIPAA, how do they know who is vaccinated and not vaccinated? How do they record that? Do you ultimately end up with a two-tiered environment where you've got some percentage, let's say 50% of your people that are vaccinated and 50% that aren't. So that means the 50% that aren't really can't go to customer sites. So, you know, how are you going to be able to deal with that, right? It starts to, I mean, as if resource planning wasn't tough enough before, this just adds another piece of complexity to it.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, and I think the reality is, you know, if vaccinated staff is more deployable, then ultimately they're more usable and arguably more valuable. So something to certainly keep in mind. Next area, kind of in the socioeconomic kind of landscape of things, you know, we do hear some of our clients expressing concerns about, you know, political gridlock, at least here in the United States. I thought it was interesting listening to the experts over at ITR. They gave a presentation earlier this month. They're saying that they don't think this is as big an issue as we might think. Their perspective is both parties spend money, but the truth is, and they have graphs if you want to go look at the presentation. The fact is that money spend does not really affect U.S. industrial production. What's also surprising is that the additional deficit spending that's been so prominent during COVID is not really contributing to growth as well. So, you know, ITR offered their perspective about the prospects of inflation and interest rates and how that can affect our businesses. With respect to inflation, they don't think that that's necessarily on our footstep, but eventually will affect how we spend. The reality is that interest rates remain historically low, and it's a good time to invest. Invest now and then look to pay off those debts. Kind of, they were pointing to 2026 as the time to do that. So I know they made the comment that that if you have a house, buy another house. If you have two houses, buy another house. You know, they were pretty bullish on investing given the interest rates are low. Any additional thoughts there from the socioeconomic landscape, Tom?
Just the positive market for systems integrators, right? So we're going to see a positive market for the next 4 or 5 years, and so let's take advantage of that growth while we can.
Great. You know, our thoughts next turn to kind of our clients, meaning the manufacturing clients and their projects. You know, certainly seeing the increased need for automation. They're rethinking manufacturing given COVID and worker shortages. In some cases, they're just having trouble getting people into the factory or enough people at the factory to run their production. So, and they're still worried about their system. One manufacturer said, you know, obsolete systems keep them up at night. So there's a lot of old equipment out there, and opportunity for our community to help them rethink their manufacturing and help them be more automated so that they're less dependent on having staff there to manually do things. The second area, and I'm sure this will be no surprise to anyone here because we hear it from everyone, is the rising cost, not just of supplies, but labor, as we've discussed previously. So, you know, our advice is that, you know, SIs need to maintain flexibility in their pricing. If you're pricing projects out, you know, how are you accounting for what has already increased in pricing and what is likely to occur in pricing? So we see more of our clients, particularly if they have master service agreements or whatnot, baking in, you know, price increases, or at least reserving the latitude to increase prices, because you got to preserve your margins as well. And then, you know, also go to, you know, with the shortage in workers, that's not just production line workers, that's engineers as well. Our clients are feeling that. Our manufacturing clients are feeling that. So one, that means they're competing for for the same resource, and in some cases, we certainly have heard from our clients that they've been more predatory and actually moving people across from an SI into the manufacturer. But it's also an opportunity. You know that they're short on workers. They're quite frankly short on visibility to their projects. So if you can demonstrate that you're you know, have good project communication, that you can help keep projects on track, keep them informed about their projects, then that's additional value in this time frame that they literally don't have enough visibility for themselves. But consider that in how you're messaging to your clients and what you can say to your clients. And also, it can impact their trust level with you. They're quite likely don't have the bandwidth to consider other options. So it's a good time to go back into your best clients and see what else you can do for them. You know, show them your complete checklist, your complete set of offerings, and have that conversation with them with where else can we be helping you, so that they don't have to look further afield.
Yeah, Jack, as you're shifting over here, I think more and more the end users, the manufacturers, are pushing even harder to reduce the number of vendors that they want to deal with, just because they don't have an option. They don't have the capacity internal to deal with it. So if you've got a great relationship, continue to nurture that great relationship for sure.
All right. Just being sensitive to the time, Don, I want to go ahead and make sure we get to the internal risks, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Okay. So when we were discussing internal risks, some of the things that came forefront to our mind is, you know, in the area of kind of finances, we've already talked about that our industry is experiencing increase in cost for labor and material. How are we accounting for that? How do we remain profitable? And how do we engage the clients given that reality? Those would be things as part of your risk management strategy that you should be considering in this. Don, thoughts about fixed price versus time and material?
Yeah, so consider the situation where you may have a 12 to 24 month fixed price project. Well, if you fix those prices based on your today's costs, those are nowhere near what the costs are going to be partway through the project. So have you had conversations with the customer about, what those, how you and the customer are going to deal with those price increases from your vendors? And similar with T&M, like if you have an MSA and there's some rates that are established in the MSA, they're probably not going to be valid in 6 months. Right. So I think it's something that we're seeing more and more of the integrators having that conversation with the customer to say, look, this is a reality. And the customers are I mean, other than the purchasing people, it's their job to push back on you. They're experiencing it anyway. They're seeing the same thing everywhere.
Yeah, thanks for that. I know you're seeing this from clients, Don, about their ERP system, and a lot of them are kind of getting long in the tooth. So thoughts or perspectives there?
Yeah, so I mean, when you think back on it, like Deltek Vision was a pretty popular package for the integrators. It's pretty much, it's pretty much being replaced now. So there's a lot of transition around the ERP systems. And that's a tough thing to do when you're right in the middle of high growth and lots of other pressures. So, but it is something that many of the integrators are realizing that they have to do to take it to the next level.
Yeah. All right. From the people perspective, we had a whole section on talent, so I don't want to belabor the point, but a couple things. One is we have clients that are considering whether or not this current high demand, is that really a bubble, or is it kind of part of their long-term hiring strategy? Depending on your answer to that question, you may want to consider a more collaborative approach, using subcontractors more to cover the bubble, or partnering up with other providers so that you can try to deal with the crunch. And then another thing we're encouraging our clients to do is really map out their future organizational chart. Goes back to the leadership development a little bit, but really where, as part of your planning, where do you see your organization? What sort of leadership will you need? And then helping that develop that leadership so that you're not stuck with not having the right leaders as you get down the road. And then,
Jack, just adding to that one bullet point there, the future organizational chart, looking at it both from the perspective of where people sit, but also the processes, right? So if there's going to be a shortage of engineers, we know there's going to be a shortage of engineers. Are they spending 100% of their time doing what only they can do? Or are they also tied up doing a lot of processes that they, you could get somebody else to do? So I think from both the people organizational chart and process organizational chart, I think are pretty critical.
Right. Okay. And that kind of does bleed down into the last point on technology. Cybersecurity is definitely becoming more of an issue, not only with our SIs, how they're protecting themselves, but whether their responsibility for protecting clients. And then the other thing we see cropping up is that there are certain system integrators that actually are really looking at IT as part of their competitive advantage. That it's not just how they get their work done, but how they can get their work done better. I know that we have an IT group, peer group that's meeting, and this is the subject of their conversations: is how are they making their organizations better?
Yeah, that ties back to the comment I was making about the processes. So we also have this quality or operational excellence type of peer group, and it's amazing the overlap between the two, where operational excellence is looking at the process and saying, why are we doing that with paper? IT is looking at the process and saying, hey, I can solve that paper issue by an API or on some kind of a, automatic transfer of information. So I think that's going to be an important part going forward. And, maybe that's a place where you want to spend some money. If money's cheap, spend some money there.
All right. So in this area of risk, if you're looking for a good book on how to manage in crisis and how to account for and overcome risky situations, then you're it. Was on the top of our list to check out. Other thoughts in this area, kind of along the lines of what Don and I were saying, is really investing in improving your business practice is a good way to mitigate risk. Can you really say what you do and do what you say? That can eliminate errors and repeated mistakes. We plug peer groups a couple of times here, but definitely learning from others is a way to reduce your risk and discuss what risks that you see, what challenges you see, and get some collaboration on what people have tried and how they're overcoming them. And then, last but not least, we'll put a plug in for CSA insurance. We don't directly benefit from that, but certainly think that's a well thought out program and a way to reduce the risk in your business. All right, Don, we're pretty much up on the post, so not a lot of time for Q&As. Certainly send us an email if you have any questions, but just want to wrap up with some of the our key takeaways, out of the time we spent with you.
Sam's got a couple of questions that he popped up there. I apologize, I missed the earlier one, Sam, but the current one he has on advising people on how to comply with new government requirements for SMEs and their cybersecurity, and that's a big topic. We're seeing more and more, particularly in the food and beverage industry, where they're even pushing SOC 2 compliance down to the systems integrators and the OTSIs, if you will. So if you're not, if you don't have somebody on staff that is focused in on this, then you better get somebody. And also, as a risk mitigation strategy, if you are not providing any cyber protection, make sure that your terms and conditions to the client tell them that you're not providing any, right? If they want that extra, then you can go and find out how to augment your team to get that. But be sure to be really clear to the customer, because they might have expectations that are beyond what you actually are intending to do.
Right. Was that it? Were there any other questions, Don, that we need to?
There's another one. Have you looked at the managers' tools training in these areas? So it was again from Sam. There's no shortage of different sources of tools and things of that nature for training. Like even Jack was mentioning, scaling up it's been around for a while. A lot of them all hit on the same topic. There's no rocket science to any of this, but yeah, getting some training, reading some books, I think is important.
Awesome. All right. Well, that's all the time we have today. I hope we've provoked some thoughts that you can take away and help your organization with. There's certainly never been more opportunity out there, and one of our big takeaways is given the challenges with your labor force, a lot of it's going to be how can we get done more. You're not magically going to solve that problem and suddenly be able to hire a ton of people. So it's how can we get the most out of the talent that we do have? And then, this last takeaway here about future-proofing your organization, really having eyes on where you're going from a strategy perspective, what you have from a talent perspective, and how you're going to get there. Map that out.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. We will provide this as a recording. So if you weren't able to catch it all, we'll get that out to you, and you can enjoy it at your leisure. Have a good day, everyone.
Have a great one, guys.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you,
Bye.
Don.